The Christmas Waltz by Audrey Sinclair. The year was 1868, and the small town of Coldbrook lay nestled in the Vermont hills, blanketed by a fresh layer of snow. Icicles hung from the eaves of cozy cottages, and the town square was adorned with garlands of pine and red ribbons. The air was crisp and cold, filled with the scent of pine and wood smoke, as the townspeople prepared for the annual Christmas Eve ball at the Coldbrook Inn, a tradition that had been upheld for decades. Clara Reynolds stood before her mirror, adjusting the burgundy dress she had spent weeks perfecting. Every stitch had been placed with careful precision, from the delicate lace trim to the subtle gathering at the waist. As a seamstress, she knew the importance of appearances, especially at an event like the Christmas Eve ball. Yet she couldn't help but wonder if she was making a mistake by attending. "You're fretting again," Anne said from her perch on Clara's bed. Her best friend had arrived early to help her prepare, though Clara suspected it was more to ensure she didn't change her mind about attending. "The dress is beautiful, you're beautiful, and you deserve a night of dancing and merriment." Clara smoothed her hands over the fabric one last time. I know. It's just, I haven't been to the ball since Michael Hathaway left for Boston," Anne finished, rising to stand beside her friend. "And now he's back, and you're afraid of seeing him again." "I'm not afraid," Clara protested, though the flutter in her stomach suggested otherwise. "I just don't want things to be awkward. We were friends once, nothing more?" Anne raised an eyebrow. "Friends who danced every dance together at the last ball he attended. Friends who took walks in the town square every Sunday after church. Friends who—" "That was a long time ago," Clara interrupted, turning away from the mirror. "He's been in Boston for over a year, pursuing his business ventures. I'm sure he's changed, just as I have." The truth was, Clara had thought of Michael often during his absence. She remembered their last dance together, how natural it had felt to be in his arms, how his smile had seemed to brighten the entire room. But she had also remembered the way he spoke of Boston, of his dreams of making his mark in the business world. A simple seamstress from a small Vermont town had no place in such grand ambitions. The walk to the Coldbrook Inn was magical, despite Clara's nerves. Fresh snow had begun to fall, and the gas lamps cast a warm glow over the white-blanketed streets. Other townspeople made their way toward the inn as well, their laughter and conversation carrying on the winter air. The inn's ballroom had been transformed for the occasion. Evergreen boughs and red ribbons adorned the walls, and dozens of candles cast a warm, flickering light throughout the space. The musicians were already playing, a lively tune that had several couples spinning across the floor. "Miss Reynolds," a familiar voice called, and Clara turned to see Mrs. Harrison, one of her regular customers, approaching. "That dress is absolutely stunning. Your work never ceases to amaze me." Clara smiled, grateful for the distraction. "Thank you, Miss Harrison. How is your daughter enjoying her new winter coat?" As they fell into easy conversation about clothing and weather, Clara began to relax. This was her community, after all. These were the people who had supported her business, who had trusted her with their special occasions and everyday needs. She belonged here as much as anyone. The evening progressed pleasantly. Clara danced with Mr. Peterson, who had taught her arithmetic in school, and with young Thomas Baker, who had recently taken over his father's general store. She shared punch and conversation with Anne and other friends, and found herself genuinely enjoying the festivities. It was during a particularly lively reel that she first saw him. Michael Hathaway stood near the entrance, snow still dusting his broad shoulders, his dark hair slightly out of place from the wind. He was speaking with his father, but his eyes scanned the room, and when they landed on Clara, his whole face lit up with recognition. Clara's heart skipped a beat, but she forced herself to remain composed. She turned back to her conversation with Anne, though she was acutely aware of Michael's presence as he made his way through the crowd, greeting old friends and neighbors. "Clara," his voice was warm and familiar when he finally reached her. "I hoped I'd find you here." She turned, offering a polite smile. "Welcome back to Coldbrook, Mr. Hathaway. I trust Boston treated you well?" "Please, it's still Michael," he said, a hint of hurt crossing his features at her formality. "And yes, Boston was educational, but I've missed home. Would you honor me with a dance?" The musicians had begun a waltz, the same one they had danced to at last year's ball. Clara hesitated for a moment, but Anne gave her a gentle push forward. "I'd be pleased to," she said, placing her hand in his. As they moved onto the dance floor, Clara was struck by how familiar it felt to be in his arms again. They fell into the rhythm easily, as if no time had passed at all. Yet there was something different too, a new confidence in Michael's bearing, a steadiness that hadn't been there before. "Your dress is beautiful," he said as they turned. "Though I shouldn't be surprised. Your work was always exceptional." "Thank you," Clara replied, warming at the compliment. "And how do you find Coldbrook after your time in the city? It must seem quite small in comparison." Michael's expression grew thoughtful. "Actually, being away has helped me appreciate it more. Boston has its charms, but there's something special about a place where everyone knows your name, where community still means something." "Is that why you've returned? For the community?" He looked at her intently. "That's part of it. I've learned a lot this past year, Clara. About business, yes, but also about what truly matters. I thought I needed to prove myself in the city, to become someone important before I could." He trailed off, then seemed to change course. "But I realized that the most important things were right here all along." Clara's heart quickened at his words, but she kept her voice steady. "And what will you do now that you're back?" "A father has offered me a partnership in the lumber mill," Michael said. "But with some of the new methods I learned in Boston, I think we could expand, maybe even open a furniture workshop. There's so much potential here, if we're willing to see it." As they continued to dance, Michael spoke of his plans, and Clara found herself drawn in by his enthusiasm. This wasn't the same young man who had left Coldbrook with stars in his eyes and dreams of city glory. This was someone who had found his purpose, who saw value in building something meaningful in his hometown. The waltz ended too soon, but Michael didn't immediately release her hand. "Would you consider taking a turn about the room with me? There's more I'd like to discuss with you." Clara nodded, and they made their way to the edge of the ballroom, where the crowds were thinner. Through the windows, she could see the snow continuing to fall, creating a peaceful backdrop to the evening's festivities. "I've been meaning to ask," Michael said as they walked, "would you be interested in helping with the furniture workshop, if we open it? Your eye for detail, your understanding of what people want, it would be invaluable." Clara looked at him in surprise. "You want my opinion on business matters?" "I want your partnership," he said earnestly, "in whatever way you're comfortable offering it. This past year has taught me the value of combining different perspectives and skills. Your success with the seamstress shop proves you understand both craft and commerce." A warm feeling spread through Clara's chest. This was unexpected. Not just Michael's return, but his recognition of her abilities as a businesswoman. "I'd need to think about it," she said carefully. "My shop keeps me quite busy." Of course, Michael smiled. "There's no rush. I'm not going anywhere this time." They were interrupted by Anne, who came to announce that the midnight snow dance was about to begin. It was a Coldbrook tradition. At midnight, the doors would be opened to let in the snow, and everyone would dance one final waltz of the evening. As the musicians began to play and the snowflakes drifted into the ballroom, Michael turned to Clara once more. "Would you dance with me again?" Clara smiled, a real, unguarded smile this time. "I'd like that very much." They joined the other couples on the floor, moving slowly as the snow fell around them. Neither spoke for a while, content to share this magical moment together. Clara felt something shift between them, not the whirlwind romance of their youth, but something deeper, more grounded. "Clara," Michael said softly as the dance drew to a close, "I know things are different now, and we both have our own lives and responsibilities, but I'd very much like to call on you properly if you'd allow it. Perhaps we could discuss the workshop plans over tea." Clara looked up at him, seeing both the boy she had known and the man he had become. "I think I'd like that," she replied. "We could start with tea and see where it leads." As the evening came to an end and the guests began to depart, Clara felt a sense of possibility she hadn't experienced in a long time. Whatever happened between her and Michael, she knew that tonight marked a new beginning, not just for them, but for Coldbrook itself. The snow continued to fall as Michael helped her with her coat, and they shared one last smile before parting ways. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but for now, the magic of the Christmas Eve ball lingered in the air, full of promise for the future that lay ahead.